Evening, people. How we all doing? Wow, what a day that's been. Oh, let me just scream. Finally, some temperature. And yeah, sure enough, it's gone absolutely mental. I've seen a 3-degree uplift in the temperature in the greenhouses today. Absolutely balmy, which has come on all too quickly as it normally does. So yeah, there's always something, of course, but no. Seriously, good to see the sun shining, and hopefully all you guys are actually going to get some time to properly enjoy your ponds this evening. Evening, my boys. Koi, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, so usual first little bit to go at, guys. Feel free, those who are tuning in, to start dropping some questions in. Seen one already in there from Tom regarding Asagi, which funnily enough couldn't have been better, because I've actually got a picture loaded up of an Asagi that I've sold to a customer today for a little bit of appreciation, because yeah, 4 pieces I've got in this pond from that original Oya batch, which was 500 pieces we started at. Got 4 left, and yeah, there's a couple. There's one of last year's in circulation that's at Perfect Aquatics now that Crafty had. I think he's still got it. Absolutely stunning from Oya. And then, like I said, I've got these 4 pieces retained from last year's Tosai, and my God, they're just mind-blowing. See them all in the bowl this afternoon was epic. So got that to share with you. And yeah, some the Asagi kind of following that vibe quite closely. Some Shusui appreciation, because I have been struck by Shusui fever. And my God, I've got a video to share with you. And if you're not a Shusui admirer, when you see this video, I'll surprise if you don't get a little bit tempted, in all honesty, because they are stunning. And just like any other variety, when you get the right lineages for these things, just like with Gosanke, it makes a hell of a difference to what you're actually getting out at the end of it and what they're capable of doing. So, like I say, a bit of that to share. And unfortunately, following from that, some of the fish have been released from that pond as well. So I'll be letting you know a few of the places that have bought those, and we'll have them in stock at some point next week as well. Other than that, been doing a bit of work with our videographer Rob today. We've got a new series up and coming. So, to be honest with you, been a little bit fatigued with the whole YouTube thing. Been wanting to mix it up. We've had lots and lots of ideas, because I think, we've done it so intensively over the sort of 12, 18 months now that we've been doing it. Really been wanting to do something to take it up a gear and mix it up at the same time for my own enjoyment and the team's enjoyment. And we've had loads of different ideas and not quite pieced out how to put them all together. And I think finally we've dropped on something. So been looking over some of the footage this morning. I'm excited to see how Rob actually puts it all together. Working quite closely with him on this one as well to hopefully achieve what we want to. And it's going to be a new regular series, dropping on a Sunday again, like we used to when we first got rolling with the channel. So yeah, exciting stuff. Looking forward to that. Yeah, question wise, like I say, guys, a few more tuned in now, so feel free to start dropping them. Tom's Asagi question, I'm just going to leave till I get to that point. See, my boys going, flags have arrived. Happy days, mate. Hope you like them. They're pretty stunning things, and thanks again for your contribution there. Right. George Murdoch, hi Ricky, I'm looking at getting into the hobby. What is the difference from a traditional Showa and a Kindai Showa? So yeah, the Kindai Showa was sort of termed the modern Showa, and by that you meaning there was meaning that they had a lot more white. So traditional Showa typically would probably be more dominant with the Beni and the Sumi, with smaller areas of Shiroji, and then yeah, from there Kindai Showa kind of evolved, and they became more prominent with the white. So a lot more Shiroji on a Kindai Showa. It's all in the pattern, but generally now we're coming to a point Kindai Showa have evolved to a point where they're becoming so sparse. I'm a big fan of those ones where there's just such a small amount of Beni, to be honest with you, and it's more about the Shiroji and the Sumi. A lot of you guys have probably seen my my big NND one that's now swimming around up at the fish farm, and that to me is just what I love in Kindai Showa. But there's a fine line where it's sort of crosses often visually when you've got experience, you can sort of see, but it's just like I say, the difference is all in just in the pattern style. Like with a he showa and a traditional, there's a fine line there as well. He showa, a borderline, a he utsori, just with very small areas of shiroji showing. But to be honest with you, traditional showa, I'd like to see more of. I've got a couple from last year's Isabatch kicking around, and I really, really like them. And I don't think you probably see enough of them these days. So, yeah, the Kindai style just kind of taken over. So, yeah, good question there, George. Like that one. Just bear with me, folks, because I was just dealing with a few customers before we came on. So I'm going to turn my phone off after this. There we go. Yeah, so Hans, hello from Norway. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw that order drop through. Fair play to you, mate, there. Every order, that's becoming quite a big commitment now, ordering all that lot, but I'm sure you're going to thoroughly enjoy it. Got to say, been really enjoying feeling the love from all over the world just recently. More and more messages dropping through with love for the content, which is great. Yeah, Australia, Belgium, just all over the place. It's great to know that it's having an impact everywhere that it goes. Right, just bear with me. Rick Stewart, evening, buddy. How you doing? Harrick, I have a drum filter running into a Bakkie. When we get to the winter months, would you bypass the Bakkie and run straight into the pond, especially shutting off the Bakkie until spring? Rick, I'm presuming, if you're presuming that, you must have another biological filter, because if you haven't, you need to keep your Bakkie running because it is your sole bio filter. You're not going to keep that on bypass, really, and just restore it with any kind of speed in spring. Obviously, you don't completely kill off your biofilm, everything just goes dormant. But if you've turned that off and it dries out, you are going to kill it off. And like I say, although it does go dormant, there's still a little bit of capacity there for you. So, yeah, depending on the route there, let's say if that's your only biological filter, then absolutely you're going to have to keep it running. If you've got another submerged system as well alongside it, then you might well be wanting to keep that running. Sorry, the possibility to turn it off, because I think the heat's getting to me. I just come out of them greenhouse, I can feel the heat coming back out of my body. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so you could turn it off if it's just an additional filter in winter and you're worried about it chilling down. Absolutely, like I say, if it's your sole bio filter, you do need to keep that running. Oh, here's a question. I'm always going to love that one. Gary, is it really worth chasing after that fines-free pond and chasing after perfect water parameters, or should we just step back and let our ponds, leave our ponds alone to get on with nature? I think probably most people who've watched my stuff for a while know where I'm going to go with that one. Chasing fines, I mean, a fines-free pond doesn't exist unless, I mean, even if you're just running tap water, you're going to have particles in there, to be honest with you. When you've got fish in, it's never going to be. And I think the definition of fines is really one to nail down, to be honest with you, because I've seen people, doing videos of fines in ponds, and they're not fines from what I've seen. They're just particles, pieces of broken up shit and stuff like that. Fines cause white haze in the water because they are that fine, and there's a mass of them, and can be quite hard to strip out. That's a big difference. And that's what I'm seeing. I think Pond Windows has massively changed this. Because like I say, without a window, you'd be looking in a pond generally and you wouldn't see a lot of the particles that are in there. And I mean these are of size. Fines are so tiny, often take, really, really small micron filtration to remove it. And to be honest with you, most of the time that comes down to biological filtration to actually filter that low. So, yeah, I think if you're in a point, and I was actually thinking about this earlier, if you're at a point where you are obsessing over fines, and again, what are perfect water parameters? This is the bit that nobody's ever really defined for anybody. Fines free, never going to happen. You're just going to drive yourself insane. And every decision you make to try and remove, and I'm going to say the particles again, because I don't think from what I've seen, people are misunderstanding what fines are. So if that's what you're chasing, and these perfect water parameters, I don't know, being zeros, again, they're not realistic, because unless there's nothing in the pond, they're never going to be zero, and it's always going to vary throughout different times when you test it. So I think the conversation needs to be more around what's best for the koi. That's always been my driver behind it all. And that's the decisions you need to be making, because ultimately, that crystal clear water, when you're also getting it down to the point of trying to get no particles in it at all, that's not great water, especially on days like today where the sun's absolutely beaming. If you've got no shade, that intense UV is damaging for the color. You can burn it, Benny especially, you can burn it out. It's not good. So yeah, I would say that often, is quite a selfish choice when you're keeping koi, to want your water that way. Nothing wrong with obviously having it clear. You want to see your fish, but it's what that definition of clear is when it comes to the point where you're trying to have zero particles in there. That's a water feature, not a pond. So yeah, I would let go of that one for sure, mate. And if it is stressing you out right now, don't let it. You can just get it out of your head and get on with enjoying your pond. Dale, hi Ricky. What's the best treatment method for white spot? I would say Colombo FMC 50. It's a mixture of formaldehyde, which is a lot stronger than any other ones on the market from what I've seen, the actual percentage of it. That's also mixed with malachite and methylene blue in there as well. More often than not, I hear people talking about multiple treatments to get rid of the cycle of white spot. That may be required, but in all the times I've used FMC, I'm always one that a treatment, I believe it should be strong enough, hopefully first time, to eradicate everything. And FMC tends to be that way. White spot's a bit of a rarity, to be honest with you, not seeing it for a long, long time, but FMC was always the go-to, and it gets in there and gets the job done. Just remember to turn your UV off when you're using any treatment like that, because it will break it down and make it slightly less effective. Alan Finley, hi Ricky, what's happening with the Taniguchi groutfish? Yeah, so finally got all the pictures. I've finished processing it all and marrying all up today. Hopefully over the weekend I'm going to be sending the update videos and all the updates out to the dealers to pass on to everybody there. But they were certainly looking good, which I'm glad to say. Hi Ricky, what's your opinion on using RO water in koi ponds? Is the only benefit the ammonia is less toxic at a lower pH, or do koi really do better in soft water, as many hobbyists and experts believe? Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to chase around the water hardness, softness. What happens? I see koi perform so well in all different types of water, hard, soft. Regardless, my water's not all that soft, and if you've watched the videos, you'll see exactly the results that are getting achieved right up to raising. I've got big fish in the facility right now, also growing at equally impressive rates. There's so much more. The real route to the success in raising for me is the art of feeding. When you get the feeding right, you understand how to feed properly. You then once you've mastered that, and then you actually realize how much food you need to do this, and how that ultimately dictates your stocking levels. It dictates what filtration is required. You've got to get that feeding level, do everything to stimulate the appetite, get the food down them, and then process what comes out of that, i.e. all the waste and everything, and build the pond around handling and processing that stuff, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of, hard or soft water. It's just not that simple. Imagine this scenario, right? You've got 4,000 gallon pond that's unheated. You don't feed great food. You don't really know how to feed. You've not got an auto feeder, but you run RO. That is going to deliver absolutely naff all in results, just as it would without running RO. Yeah. So even at the point there of if you've got all that gear as well, identical ponds, heated, great filtration, all the rest of it, hard or soft, if you don't know how to feed or you're using inferior food, the results, the ones that get the better feed in are going to do better regardless of the type of water. Then you've got the quality of that water as well. And obviously RO, yes, naturally is a better quality water, you'd say, because it's all stripped out, but it's also absolutely devoid of everything. So to some degree, you've got to build that back up, or mix it with an incoming water as well. So you've got to make sure that percentage of that or the source water is very well treated. Otherwise, you don't get those benefits. So yeah, I think there's just a much bigger, expansive picture, rather than just trying to shrink it down to should I run RO? Shouldn't I run RO? There's some benefits I see there, like I say, in the quality of water. And that's what I put above, to be honest, rather than being hard or soft or all the rest of it. It's the quality of the water. If you can really, treat your tap water really, really well, you're going to do probably just equally as well. There's also a call, I have seen fish kind of the Benny more than anything in really, really hard, and I mean excessively hard, almost like concrete water. It seems to just age the Benny a bit quicker, but also there's other factors in that as well. Like I say, if you've got excessive UV coming into the pond, you're going to do that. There's loads of different things, and that's why I'm not one just to pigeonhole a certain thing. But the one for me that is just a given is you master the art of feeding, then deal with everything else around it, create the environment to stimulate the appetite, which is mainly the temperature and oxygen, and away you go. So yeah, and I'm not going to make out it's more complicated than that, because it's really not. And again, shared all that stuff time and time again, and the results are all there for everybody to see as well. If you're into it, that side of the hobby, faffing around and all the rest of it, fair play. And there's the recycled RO systems now, which, when I've spoke to Andy about them, Finch filtration a few times, it seems to make sense in some cases. But like I said, I just think there's a lot to learn before you want to get into the debate of hard or soft or all the rest of it. When you've mastered everything else and you feel like you can take it a bit more, it might be something you look at. But even at this point, I'm not at that point where I'm thinking, I need to be running all this on RO water. To be honest, the one thing I'm looking at the minute is oxygen levels, because I want to get them the levels up, certainly at times like this, because it is having an impact on feeding. And I probably, if I can get some data, conversion ratio as well. But that's not an easy thing to do at scale with so many ponds inside greenhouses as well. But say we are looking at solutions for that one, but that's literally there. I think that is the only thing I could change where I would see a massive difference in the performance. Thank you for all the questions coming in, guys. It's always appreciated. Obviously, it's your questions that make the show. Without them, it'd be pretty boring. AJ Koi, Ricky, thanks for all the good advice straight from South Africa. Pleasure. Chris Purnell, best thing to get rid of green water, UV. Just hands down. I think I've said this before, I absolutely hate the algae treatments that you can get. Really dangerous because they change things so fast. 9 times out of 10, they could cause too big of swings in pH. And yeah, dangerous for me to change the environment that quickly, especially with something like pH. So your UV, if you've already got a UV and it's not quite working, it might just need a service. Remember, there's a quartz sleeve inside most UVs that needs cleaning as well. UV bulb, 6 months really is your effective life on them at full capacity. So if it's been longer than that, get your bulb changed, and then let's say potentially look at the flow rate that you're passing through. It might be a bit too quick because it needs a certain amount of contact in order to do its job effectively. Fabian, how do you improve the Benny on my Sankey? I'd have to see a picture of your Sankey, to be honest with you. Do you use colour food is the question I'd ask, or is it just bad Benny? Because if it's bad Benny, there's going to be nothing to improve it, to be honest. So that is the question I would be asking, is I'd need to see it. But like I say, you can't improve it if it's just no good in the first place. If it's good Benny that's kind of been damaged by something circumstantial, then yes, that you can potentially work on. But if the quality is not there in the first place, you're not going to pull anything out of it. Right, bear with me, folks. Probably now, I think it'd be a good time to bring the Asagi bit in. So if you've not seen it already, the videos are on our YouTube channel of the Oya Asagi from last year. Tom's question is, hi Ricky, how long do you advise giving Asagi for the Benny to come out before you call it a lost cause? So I would say, getting into Sansai, so I would say heading towards Yonsai, if you've not seen any signs, and I mean no signs, nothing in the cheek, the pec, the belly line, anything like that, you're possibly looking at a lost cause at that point, to be honest. So yeah, but it's real up and down cycle of them. So the fish I'm about to show you, one from today, this is Nisai going Sansai this autumn. These actually had superb Benny on them that had developed over the winter time. And as the heat and the growths hit them again, the Benny has fell off. So even say going to Sansai there, we're not really in the process, but I've seen the Benny. That's the difference. At Nisai, Tosai, not so much. I do look for a tiny sign. It is one of my key criteria. And then as the growing period it's gone, let's say over winter, it started coming out quite nicely. And then it's dropped off again. So if we just, let me find the picture, just bear with me, guys. It is only the top view because this is a bit of appreciation there for there's just everything going on there. The Fuka and the Kadogin, absolutely stunning. These Oya ones, you know, Kadogin is a really, really consistent trait of them, and you can see it there. Kado is the Japanese word for corner. So you've got that metallic shine on the corner of each scale. It looks phenomenal, honestly phenomenal. And this very fish, I mean, now it's just blew me away with the size earlier. So that's up to 53 cm. It was crazy where it's at. And that's probably going to be looking at like a 60 plus cm Sansai coming there for sure. Now, like I say, the Benny was really strong over winter, and now it's just resorted back to there's one piece of Benny on the pelvic fin underneath. But from experience, the one I mentioned at the beginning of the show, last a Sansai that I sold to Crafty over at Perfect Aquatics, that particular fish was had a cracking winter, really great development after again losing most of it over the summer period. And what's likely going to happen there is, I think, over time, just as maturity kicks in, the fallback on that will become less and less, and it'll be less it'll be more resilient in the temperature as well. But I think if you're at the point where you're kind of at 3 years going on 4 years around that territory, if you've never seen a sign of it and there's no sign of it, you've probably got a write-off there in regards to it coming, to be honest with you. But that will differ from various lineages as well. Oya is a bit of a slower burner, as I've seen it. Otsuka is a slower burner. But then we get ones like Aoki Masaki's line of Asagi tends to come up a lot quicker. And those from Tanaka, again, tends to come up a lot quicker. So I would give more time to Otsuka and Oya Asagi for sure. But again, just appreciate what's going on. I mean, that is a top piece. I cannot wait to see it because all those qualities you see in there just get better and better as it gets bigger and everything stretches out more. Really superb. And like I say, the growth on them has been absolutely banging. So yeah, always loved an Asagi. Right back from, I think, my dad's first Japan trip back in 2000. That's the fish I had on my mind constantly, like, get me an Asagi, Dad, I need one. And actually back then I remember he got 3 absolute bangers from Marido. I say of all places, I think he's still at them now, to be fair. And I've just always loved the variety. I think the simplicity of it is stunning. You get loads of different variants from those different lineages. As I was describing earlier with the Oya ones, they actually do tend to carry a bit more body volume, probably the bulkiest of the lot out of all the Asagi breeders. Over the Marihiro is a pretty impressive, and yeah, growth wise, they tend to get a bit beefier. Otsuka probably, for me, always tends to nick it because he's got such a strong characteristic in the face shape, and they're just absolutely delightful. But let's say you get something different from each of these breeders, but when you see them mint with the Benny all up on the belly and in the fins and all the rest of it, just top draw. I was lucky enough to actually be there when Otsuka harvested his Sansai, and had no idea. We were just in the fish house, and he came back with a truck, went off inside, so lingered around. Then he starts pulling all these Sansai Asagi out, and they were insane. And after a while studying, pulled one up, which I picked, and yeah, it's gone on to win a second prize already in the All Japan this year, beaten by another Otsuka Asagi. But I think longer term, this one's going to come good, and hopefully pip it. Yeah, and moving on from that one, Shusui, folks. So Love them or hate them. I don't want to see any hate for them today, because I'm hopefully going to be converting some of the haters when I show you this video. I believe a lot of the time with some of these varieties, I do get they're quite frustrating. They're a bit of a temperamental fish, i.e. because they naturally darken like Asagis, but this all comes down to getting the right lineage. Because again, even with some Asagis, I can't keep them over here. Some have been truly terrible over the years. Shusui is exactly the same, and they just differ. The effect of them differs in different water as well, and different temperatures that they're kept at even. But when they're good, they're good. And I think a lot of people don't get to see the truly good examples that really inspire people to want to keep these varieties, to be honest. So this year, Kawakami Shusui for me, hands down, are the ones to have. He's created a phenomenal lineage, and growth wise, they're insane. Had them once before, just off chance, a random amount of them I had in a mix of other fish from him, and was blown away by what came. Growth wise, they were just insane. Not managed to get them since, because not a big producer, and to be honest with you, Narita tends to buy them all every year, what does become available. So rather than try and faff around, I just went straight to Narita this year and mopped them up, landed straight on them as well, and took the lot. So I'm going to share this video. I was doing the selection on these. This is my second selection so far. Just needed to get some bodies out of the pond, because I'd say the growth's been so crazy. It's literally in like 5 weeks or so gone from looking, okay, to looking massively overstocked. And this collection here is the ones I have put back in the pond. These are my keepers for now, but there's an equally impressive collection. So the only reason I've split them was to get some weight out of the pond that's been sold and going out to some dealers. So here you go, folks. Sorry about it pixelating a bit. I am going to be sharing this video out on Facebook soon as well, but I just think that looks so awesome, so impressive. They've got really good quality scale lines down the back, really consistent. That's what Kawakami's tended to really deliver well, that quality of that scale line. Different variants in there, mainly a mix of traditional Shusui and Hana style Shusui. Not so much on the He Shusui front. They're a bit of a rarer beast. But you just look, got that Benny really popping now. But trust me, these things are growing at an absolutely insane rate. These were 30 to 35 already that's been released back into the pond. So I'm anticipating Rob probably will take some of these through to 50 cm with ease, in all fairness, and they're just going to look the nuts. As a smaller toe side, they kind of start out and they look a little bit darker. And then naturally over time, as they start to grow, the darkness in the skin softens a bit, which is normal. And also the bit of shiroggi they have got tends to thicken as well and mask up some of that darkness. Absolutely banging fish. So I'll play you that one more time. But I just think that looks the nuts. And when I've seen all Japan, level Shusui, when you see them, they are just breathtaking. Like I say, that downside is that they do darken, but just with Asagi, Asagi naturally darken. And I've shared this tip in the videos before. Asagi, you need to pick them lighter when they're younger. Absolute criteria, pick them lighter in the head, lighter in the body. Same with Shusui, lighter in the body, lighter in the scale line sometimes, lighter in the head. And you're going to give yourself the best chance. And especially when they're growing and there's a bit of temperature as well. Temperature just tend to ease back the sumi development. So the rate at which they darken is going to be a bit lighter. But ultimately, if the quality of that skin's good enough, it's going to hold the sumi back anyway. Really, really great pieces there. On those ones, so those particular batch, the ones I have released, they're going out to some dealers next week. So far, they are Northeast Koi up in Newcastle. They're going to have some heading that way. We've got Karuto Koi out in Bristol way. He's got some going, and Stockport Koi up in Manchester. So you can get them, and I know Perfect Aquatics has got quite a good stock in as well. So if you would like a Kawakami Shusui, you can head in any of those directions or make an inquiry and possibly get your name put on one. and not crazy amounts of them, but absolutely superb. So yeah, caught the Shusui bug well and truly, and nice to have them. It's been a long time since I've done a batch like that. So yeah, and I'll share a bit more of that with you along the way. We've certainly got some footage for this new video series we're starting, so they'll certainly get covered a bit more. Right, I suppose I should dive into a few more questions. Let's see what we've got. Sorry, Koi, I'm just building a new pond for a client. Any advice on returns, please, Ricky? Yeah, well, if I'm building it, I'm sticking all the returns in one end, every single return, no matter, regardless of what it is, a shower, in-wall returns, above water returns, and aeration as well. You know, that one directional current is what I'm all about. I love it. It's how every one of my ponds is set up, and it's what I go for. I'd still always just install an aerated bottom drain. So I think it's worth doing while you're at that point, because once it's cast into the base, it's not something you're going to be changing. And it's there, you know, should the client want it or need it. But other than that, one directional is where it's at for me. The air bars are absolutely superb, nice addition now, becoming more and more accessible. The pond where I've got one of them running at the minute, I do absolutely love the current that generates, is insane, along with the above water return that just shoots out over the surface, and that it creates a wicked current in the pond. And that's a 20-foot long stretch, and with the heaviest feeding, I sometimes get a bit of a build up in one corner, but it's nothing massive, and I doubt anybody else would be feeding those kind of levels on a big stretch like that. In all honesty, a big stretch like that should probably have 2 bottom drains in it anyway at 20 foot, but it hasn't. So I work with what I got. And AJ's here. How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Been hard at it with me for a couple of days as well, to be fair to him. So yes, that's where I go with that one, sorry, Koi. Right, next one up. Oh, done that one. Let me just cross them ones off so I actually know where I get. Kelly, hi, I suffer with fibromyalgia and mental health. I'm very sorry to hear that, Kelly. I've just discovered your channel on YouTube. I've watched nearly everything you have put on there this week. I've learned so much from you. Amazing knowledge. I have issues remembering things, and it's not easy just to pop on YouTube and watch you again and again till it sinks in. I found you invaluable. Oh, thank you very much, Kelly. Much appreciated, and I'm glad it's of use to you. I've done that one as well. Right, let's have a look. Tobias, hi Ricky, going into winter, which is the best method when going down from 24, 25 down to colder water? My pond is outside, so it's ambient when I'm not heating. Just slowly, absolutely slowly. I'd wind the feed back. That's going to be a big one. So as well as winding the temperature down, you want to be winding the feeding down, and probably, you know, you want to do that in the correct way, because if you're at 24, 25, you start coming off the food too quickly, you're still maintaining temperature, you're going to lose some of them weight gains that you've got over that period. But likewise, you don't want to end up dropping down too much. So, you know, I'd probably make the first step of coming down to, say, from 25 to 22, take a change of feeding pattern there, because that's where I'd be looking at going from, say, every 2 to 3 hours to probably every 4 hours at that point. And then your next step, bracketing it down slowly, probably down to 18. At that point, probably only feeding a few times a day. Then if you're going cooler than that, you want to wind that feeding right down, probably so you're just on a manual basis, once, twice a day. And I don't know where you're going down to 12, 8, but really, really gradually make sure everything's healthy at the point of starting to turn it down. And then, let's say, slowly bring it down, but make sure you bring the feeding down as well, and just give them some time in them cooler temperature bands. Not to give them loads of time going from 24 to 25, but say 24, 25 down to 22, there's a difference. Down from 22 to 18, there's a difference. Down from 18 to 12, there's a difference. So in all them different, just giving them some time to adjust to that temperature band before you go dropping it again. And that way you're just going to prevent any kind of shock, and let the body change and everything adapt to that temperature band that they're in. That is the strength of having the heating, that you obviously get that level of control. Carry on from that. Would you keep heating until the weather is below 12 degrees, then turn the heat off and let it slowly fall down to below 12, so don't spend too much time in the 14, 16 range? how we do it. Yeah, I mean, don't worry. When you see that 14-16 range, it's when I see people keeping them in that all winter that I find that crazy. But you just decide what you want the end to be. Personally, if you can do it, I wouldn't let it go below 8 degrees. If you can keep it at 12, great. I think some of the stuff that tends to happen more so if you get too cold is obviously you can start throwing pox, although it's not life threatening most of the time. Sometimes it can cause a bit of color damage if you get a nasty bit sat over some Benny. Obviously its presence there is covering the color, so when it leaves, if it's been like that for a long time, it can actually leave a patch behind where that color has lightened because it's not got UV to it. So it's things like that you probably want to consider. The warmer you are, the less likely that is to ever throw. And yeah, so just decide where you're at. But like I say, I think from what I've just said before, if you're kind of at 18, your next step would be get it down to 12, and then from 12 to 8, if that's what you're doing, or wherever you're sitting. It's just going to depend on how much you want to invest in that heating and how efficient your heating system is. UV before or after mechanical filtration, pros and cons on both. Paul, it doesn't really make a difference, buddy, to be honest. I mean, ultimately, your system is probably going to dictate where it goes. If you're pump fed, you're going to have to go before the filter anyway. If you're gravity fed, you're going to go after. You're going to have to go after it. If we look at the Japanese systems, their light for years is just a unit, like a strip light, small strip light that sits in top of the filter chamber, just shining UV on the chamber. Obviously, it's the process, it's what it's doing. Basically, it's splitting those algae cells so they all clump together, makes them big enough for your filter to extract out. So at some point in the pass, your filter's going to get it. So before or after, it's doing that job, which your filter will eventually get it anyway. So yeah, there's no ups or downs to that. But ultimately, like I say, you're going to be dictated to by the system. Not spoke about this one for a while. Gary, is there any real benefit to running a trickle in, trickle out setup? Again, everyone's got their own take and opinions on this. What I'm going to default back to really is it all depends on the quality of the water coming in. Trickle in, trickle out. If you know the quality of the water's good and you're or you know where your water's at and you're treating it accordingly, so you're only putting good water in, then yeah, trickle in, trickle out can be great. But if you're trickling in and you're trickling in too much, which a lot of people do and don't control it properly, just kind of willy-nilly get it whacked on, don't purify it at all sometimes, or then don't keep the purifiers in check. The issue is there, you're just going to be constantly feeding in this poor water that is going to cause you health problems. You know, say you've got heavy metals in there, which a lot of water does. I mean, the stuff we're looking through at the minute, every test I've seen tells us that the iron levels in the country are almost pretty much at base level, at the maximum fish safe value that was determined by Ann Telford back in the day. The problem with that is if there's any traces of other metals that might be within fish safe value, the actual value when you've got more than one metal present, the fish safe values individually aren't known because of the effect of having various metals in there at the same time. So yeah, that really what dictates whether you make that choice. Of course, the gradual slow process of trickle in, trickle out is better than a big water change, but ultimately it's the same thing. You'd be better off if you've got a trickle in, trickle out with really poor quality water going in versus doing big water changes with good quality water going in. It's the big water changes. It's all just determined for me by that quality of water, and it's well worth investigating. And if you are going to run it, say, make sure you're treating the water, know what the water is and what you're dealing with, and that's by having it tested out of your mains, not just the water report, because they vary so much from the water report to what actually comes out of your tap. So it's having that tested out of your tap to know what you're dealing with, where your water's at, what you might need purifier wise, carbon wise, setup wise to do it. And then from there, do what the hell you want, basically. But just make sure the water's good. Right, let's have a look. Kelly, I have a Gromo that was given to me as a present. The white has a pink tinge compared to my Shiro. It's been this way for 12 months now. Is there anything I can do to improve the white? Kelly, I need to know, is that a pink tinge as in stress veins in it, or is it potentially just coloration? in the skin. That's what I really need to know on that one before I can truly answer it, because there'd be a difference either way. Garomo can tend to have a slight pinking in the skin sometimes, but that's not something that would clear up. It's likely like a secondary colour under the skin that's never materialized or developed. If it's the stress, just coloration, yeah. So no, nothing you're going to do there, unfortunately. Like I say, if it was stress, you'd have to look. Sometimes if you get those fish that are continuously stressed and pinking when everything else in the pond's good, you often need to look in what could actually be happening internally with that fish to keep causing the problem, to be fair. Right. Dale, with the bad summer so far for unheated ponds, how would you progress the feeding if we are to have a late summer with the feeding? I'm using JBL auto feeder with Saki, balanced 6 times a day, every 3 hours currently. Yeah, I mean, you just feed to the temperature, Dale. That's again what's dictating the program that you're using. Every 3 hours. Again, I don't know what temperature you're at, mate, to be honest, but it is just going to be that dictates it. Don't worry too much about when it is. You know, I've given fish winter growing period sometimes when I've not had the ponds ready to actually grow them over the summer. So I've gave them the winter so that they're at the right kind of target size I want them for their age coming through. So yeah, that's not really that important. With bigger fish, often the latter part of the summer heading into autumn is a good time for bulking up, but you'll get them moving whenever it is, depending on the temperatures that you've got. And yeah, you're right, bad summer for unheated ponds, mate. I'm really feeling people with that one this year because it has been absolutely shocking. Looking for a nice Gin Rin Showa. Any tips? Hiroi, good place to look for sure. Focus on the quality of the Gin Rin. And again, just remember, one of the big things with Gin Rin Showa is there's different preferences with them. The Japanese tend to like it where Sumi actually sits on top of the Gin Rin. So where there's Sumi, you won't actually see Gin Rin. You'll often only just see that on the Shiroji and the Beni. But as far as I'm aware, over in the UK, judging with that is different, and they tend to like to see Gin Rin all over the whole body. So big differential there. But trust me, when you see it with the Sumi on top of the Gin Rin, looks incredibly, incredibly impressive. And just to follow on there, does Gin Rin Showa head pattern always show up as it gets older? Not guaranteed to. Showa do tend to always develop some form of Sumi on the head. It's common, but it's not guaranteed. So again, look for some signs of it somewhere on the head, and fingers crossed. In that case, most of the time it comes. If there's nothing showing at all anywhere, that's when you'd be a bit more cautious. But again, at that point, it's not guaranteed that it's not going to come. So it's always just a bit of a gamble, but in Showa it is pretty reliable overall. Let's have a look. Nicholas, hi Ricky. We'll be in Japan. In November. Which breeder should I see with the strongest Benny in Showa? As you know, Australia doesn't allow imports, but in Perth and Sydney, we are allowed to keep. Yeah, very unfortunate that, mate, for sure. Benny wise, I mean, Dainichi is you've got to go there and see Showa, because that's where you're going to see Showa at their absolute best. But I would add to the mix, especially now you're talking about Benny, I would definitely add to the mix the Odekan Showa, because these things are seriously impressing me. And I think it's the Benny more than anything that's got me, because, a lot of breeders, obviously assume is so important in Showa, but that sometimes comes at a cost to Benny. Benny can be the bit to really, really struggle with. And he's really nailed it with those. So super impressed. Like I say, I've said it a few times. I think they're going to become a staple for me at Koi Wholesale now for sure, as well as some of the other breeders. But yeah, Dainichi is you'll see Showa like you've never seen before, and yeah, it'll blow you away. So be prepared for that one. Right, one more, guys, and then I think we'll just have another final bit of Shusui appreciation, and I'm going to get off because I think I need to rehydrate, to be honest. Tobias, with all the breeders getting better and better genetics and Sakai wanting to grow this year's All Japan Koi Show GC to 115, do you think that everyone will be able to own 1 meter Go Sanki one day? Oh, there's a good question. I think that'll be a long way off because, I mean, don't get me wrong, there'll be more and more big fish in circulation as they naturally get bigger. But, you know, how many people these days actually own koi at 80, 85 and 90 cm? Not that many. So we're talking a meter. It's going to be a long way off before there's enough volume of those Go Sanki at 1 meter to actually bring the price down enough for people to get them. Genetically, obviously, yeah, genetics are becoming more and more capable of doing it, but you still need the right environment and techniques to do it. You know, if we're talking about the Sanki there that Sakai's got, I believe that fish is swimming around in a pond that's about 40 foot long with 4 or 5 other fish. You know, huge, huge environment and the absolute best conditions being given to achieve that. You know, you got that environment with all that knowledge packed behind it. Genetic capability, has that much changed? Yes, in recent years, Sakai's really been tinkering and doing insane stuff. So yeah, I think the capability is in there so much now to get, you know, those right lineages to a meter. I've got Momotaro, Kohaku, I've not had for a long time. And these things, again, I'm just watching them grow and it's just insane what they're doing. So there's so much genetic potential when you get the right lineages. I think it's more the knowledge and the environment to do it that's the bigger part of the problem. When that becomes better, then I think you'll see more and more 1 meter Go Sanki being produced, or being owned, should I say. I think being produced naturally by these guys, it is becoming more and more anyway. So yeah, good question there, Tobias. Like that one, mate. So yeah, there we go, guys. Just going to again share with you one more time those epic Shusui because I think they look insane. Let me just find that video. There we go. Love them or hate them. I think you've got to appreciate quality when you see it. And that, to any koi lover, I think looks impressive. Like I say, there is some of these out in circulation now. So if you're interested, Northeast Koi, Karuto Koi, Stockport Koi, and Perfect Aquatics, you will be able to pick Kawakami Shusui up. There's also a few other dealers who's got the smaller batch that went earlier. I just haven't got all those to hand, but anybody who's interested, if you drop us a PM, I can dig that information up for you to let you know. There we go. Magic. So there we have it, guys. Thanks for everyone who's tuned in. I'm not quite sure where we're at. I do believe because Chris and Joe's been on holiday, so auction-wise, we're all out of whack with that one. So we'll try our best to get. Well, we've got everything set up actually. So this week's is going to get moved to next week. So next Wednesday we're back on with the auction, and again Thursday for Q&A live. So amazing stuff. Thanks, guys. And let's say I'm going to go and hydrate with water as well, not beer. And yeah, catch you next week.